Welcome to Eat, Sleep, Wine, Repeat, a podcast for all you wine lovers who, if you're like me, just cannot get enough of the good stuff. I'm Yanina Doyle, your host, brand ambassador, wine educator, and sommelier. So stick with me as we dive deeper into this ever-evolving, wonderful world of wine. And wherever you are listening to this, cheers to you. Hello, wine friends, and welcome back to another episode. And this one is all about cheese and wine pairings. And I've decided to release the next two episodes on cheese and wine with the fact that July 14th is Mac and Cheese Day and National Wine and Cheese Day is July 25th. So start working out your combinations now. If you're going to get some mac and cheese, Chardonnay is always a great choice. Or traditional method, sparkling wine, perhaps English, anybody? Blanc de Blanc. And if you're throwing in some truffle in your mac and cheese, then an aged vintage Blanc de Blanc would work perfectly with those kind of savoury, earthy undertones to go with the truffle. Right, today's episode is with Jess Summers, who is the founder of Mouse and Grape, where you can find absolutely amazing cheese and wine hampers. So today's episode will be going through her summer hamper that's got canned wines. I've talked about wines from the Canned Wine Co. before. So we'll be looking at the pairings and what process she goes through when deciding what wines she should pair with cheeses, how to taste cheese and wine correctly and the specific order. You'll learn about storing cheese, the art of cutting cheese up properly. Of course, there will be plenty of perfect pairings mentioned throughout. And actually, I find Jess incredibly inspiring. She is going to tell you her story. She is a perfect example of starting from scratch. If you're following your passions, you will achieve success. So I hope you enjoy her story. I hope you get some inspiration about what you need to drink with that slab of cheese you've got in your fridge, and enjoy this episode. Are you ready to tell me how Mouse and Grape was created, was invented?
Yes. How it was born.
How it was born, how you birthed it into the world.
Yeah. I do think of Mouse and Grape as my child.
So you should. It's something so special, yeah.
All-consuming.
Oh,
and my love.
You love it, but perhaps at moments hate it as well. But how did it come about? Because you love cheese and you do love wine. I think that one goes without saying, right?
Yes, I do. So basically, I a similar story to a lot of people. My life changed completely because of COVID. Mm-hmm. So my background was in property. So I was a lettings manager in a family business. And I thought that I was going to take over the business. So I wanted to get some experience working in a different company in London. Mm-hmm. And after a few months of doing like different interview processes, this was all throughout like November and December, I secured a job. Actually, I remember it was January the 6th that I said yes to start on March the 9th, 2020.
Oh no! On March 2020, literally, isn't that like the day, or like a few days before the end?
Yeah, exactly. So I literally remember I started this brand new job. It was in Holland Park. I ended up only going in for 10 days, and then they said that we've made the difficult decision to terminate your contract because of this virus. Please hand back in your car and your phone and.
Not
Sorry.
The car.
Yeah. Well, luckily I hadn't given up my actual car, but I was thinking of selling it. So yeah, it was a really tricky time, and there'd been a lot of effort and also kind of mental build up to actually leaving the family business to go elsewhere. And then it all kind of came crumbling down. And obviously I'm very fortunate, like, I don't know, lots of people are in difficult situations. I wasn't in a very difficult situation. It was just unfortunate timing because I could also slip through the gap of furlough. So I would have loved to have had been furloughed.
Too. I mean, I would have taken on so many more passions. But anyway, maybe cheese and wine tasting. But anyway.
Yes, exactly. So anyway, long story short, so I was back working with the family business because everyone else was furloughed. And I was just a bit miserable, to be honest. The 10 days that I was working in property in the other company was enough time to make me realise it actually wasn't for me. So that was a really, really a blessing in disguise. And I was just having a chat with my partner about it all. And he was like, well, what do you love? What makes you really happy? And I was like, cheese and wine. He was like, well, why don't you just do that? Why don't you do something in cheese and wine?
I like
And
your partner.
Yeah, I know, he's
very
great.
intelligent.
Charlie is amazing. And when because it was lockdown, obviously it would be quite difficult for me to get a job in the cheese or wine industry at that time. So I thought the best way of doing it would be to start my Instagram account. And he was like, well, what would you call your cheese and wine business? I just said, Mouse and Grape. He was like...
Just like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Done. He was like, that's really good, actually. You should do that. So that's how it started.
From an Instagram account. So hang on, at this point then, you had the passion, but did you have the knowledge of cheese?
No, I had knowledge in the fact that I was an avid drinker of wine and eater of cheese, but not finesse.
I think many of us are that, actually. But this is an inspiring story for anyone who's like sat around going, I'm just not doing what I love. Like, you have literally done that, trained, and now, which we will get to with all your success, it's going really, really well. So, okay, so talk to me about being a cheesemonger. So how does one train to be a cheesemonger?
So this is funny because I think I kind of did the wine qualifications first. So I worked my way through my WSETs levels 1 to 3 in 6 months.
Oh, that's awesome. That's dedication.
Yeah, and it was great because it was almost like fast track knowledge. I drank so much during that time, and
I hope you spat as well.
Not always. It depended on the wine, but. I just really, my palate was fantastic because of how much I was tasting so quickly. And then for cheese, I actually started Mouse and Grape before I had done any professional cheese training. So I had gone to the Fine Cheese Company, which were going to be my cheese suppliers, and just done a big tasting with their cheese buyer in London. And kind of I had an idea of the different styles of cheeses I wanted. And then the first time I actually cut cheese properly was the day that I sent out my first lot of Christmas hampers, because I'd almost forgotten that this was something that I would need to learn how to do.
Talk to me about cutting cheese properly. What is cutting cheese properly?
So basically, after that Christmas, I was like, I need cheese experience. So I got a job working at La Fromagerie, which is in Marylebone, is one of the most incredible cheese and also wine actually and grocery store. And there's a specific art to it, and you need to be able to learn how to cut cheese, any shape of cheese, by weight. So if a customer will say, I want 150 grams, 200 grams, 500 grams. And also there's certain ways that you use the wire. There's a specific way to wrap cheese. There's a lot of ways to look after cheese so that it stays in its best possible condition. It's a bit more complex than you would think. And also there's lots of quite in-depth information about kind of how cheese is made, the different milks, the different style. There's so many different cheeses. There's over 700 different cheeses made in the UK alone.
In the UK? Oh, in the UK,
gosh. Yeah. We make more cheeses than France do, more varieties.
Boom! Oh,
yeah. There's been a huge cheese revolution in the UK. It kind of started in the 70s. And it was like, I think actually you were seeing this in most food related industries. There's a real passion for going back to quality over quantity. And that's what's happened in the cheese world as well. And you've got some really exciting cheese being made.
So just going back to something that's intrigued me, storage. If I, for instance, at home have cut up very badly with some dodgy knife, a load of cheese, how should I store that? Or is that very different at home compared to being in a cheese shop with all the mod con stuff?
The best place for your cheese is in the fridge, in the salad compartment in a Tupperware. Okay. Is the best place. And I'd say cling filmed separately as well, or wrapped in the wax paper that you've got it in, if you're buying cheese from a cheesemonger. But the cheese that I was working, if anyone's been to La Fromagerie in London, they will know that the cheese room is just a big fridge. It's amazing. There's over 300 cheeses in there, and it was between 5 and 7 degrees in there at all times. So I just got used to wearing thermals and a fleece. But for me, for food hygiene reasons, I have to store all of my cheese below 5 degrees. But if you're having a cheese at home, under 8 degrees, it should be fine.
Okay. Do you know, so anybody who's just an absolute cheese lover, is it like going into like a sweetie store, but for cheese, like going into La Fromagerie, just like looking at
honestly, it's amazing. Like it is. And the smell's incredible. I used to...
Is it stinky?
It's so stinky, but also it's like you don't realise that you smell of it. And like I used to kind of leave the room and just my hair, my clothes and everything would just smell of like milk, basically. And I'd be going out after work kind of spraying myself with perfume so that I didn't smell like cheese. But you kind of get used to it. You get used to the whole thing.
You might do, others might not.
Yeah, no, I know. I quite like the smell of cheese, and luckily my partner does too.
Yeah, he's still with you. So tell me, when you are putting together your hampers, the people, everyone listening, you can, in the UK, I guess, actually, sorry, disclaimer, are you sending, have you managed to find any way to get it further than the UK?
You know what, I have tried, and then I decided not to because it was so complicated.
Okay, those of you listening abroad, you can't get the hamper, but do listen, because I'm going to be getting Jess to give us a whole list of all cheeses and pairings that we want to try, so you can do that in whichever country.
You can buy it as a gift for someone in the UK. I literally had an order come through today, and the guy is living in Hong Kong and is sending a Father's Day hamper here. So I was like, that's excellent.
Love that. Okay, so for those of you in the UK or with somebody to gift in the UK, you can get these hampers. So what's the process that you go through when you're choosing the wines and the cheeses?
So for me, the reason that I set up Mouse and Grape, or the key idea behind it with the hamper side of the business, because I do hampers, I also do tasting events, I do writing, I do judging, I do communicating. But the hampers, I basically found that I couldn't find what I wanted out there already. Either if you have a hamper, usually like the wines are average, the cheese is in wax, it's not artisan, or you've got like some really great places doing cheese. Or some really great places doing wine, but there's no one focusing on both in equal measure with that expertise as a cheesemonger and as a sommelier. So what I've always been fascinated by is that cheese and wine pairing combination. It's getting that like magic moment when you put them both in your mouth. And this is also another thing people don't realise. When you taste cheese and wine, the best way to do it is to have like a sip of the wine first, taste the wine, have a bite of the cheese and taste that. And then if you take another bite of the cheese, hold it in your mouth, then take a sip of the wine, have them both in your mouth.
Oh, no, yeah. That's okay. I'm out of the game. That wasn't what I was expecting you to say. Carry on.
Combine that flavour and then chew and then swallow. And then it's really in the finish that you'll get that kind of that combination. And the pairings that I think it is very obvious in are like rosés and goat's cheeses, or very like white acidic wines with a gorgeous goat's cheese. And you can get things like Driftwood, which is the White Lake Company. There's Golden Cross, Cinnaden Hill. I'm thinking all British cheeses, but you can get Saint Maur de Touraine, lots of lovely Chev cheeses. And then with anything like, I mean, I know Balfour do a nice rosé.
Yes, we do.
Also,
Shout out to Balfour Winery.
Yeah. And then also like Folk as well is another one that I really like. Whispering Angel as well. Yeah, there's that combination though is when you get the real magic, and it makes me really excited. But I can honestly, when I was first putting them together, I think that was your original question. I did a big tasting with my supplier at Jeroboam's, and we basically we tasted through like, it must have been about 50 bottles of wine. To basically just decide and discover what my kind of style and palette was going to be. And then we paired up the wines. I matched them all with different cheeses, and then narrowed it down and created the hampers. So I've got like a French hamper, an Italian hamper, a Spanish hamper. And then what I've actually done is I've not necessarily paired those with Spanish, French and English cheeses. I've done it based solely on that flavour combination. So if there is a French cheese that goes really well with the Spanish cheese, I've kept that in. because my emphasis is on that flavour combination.
Well, okay. I am going to, because I've got the hamper in front of me. Actually, the picnic hamper. So,
Yes.
well, actually, I'm calling it the picnic hamper because actually we've got good quality wines in can. And anyone who's been listening to my podcast will know, one, I'm a fan of good quality wine in can, and specifically the Canned Wine Co. I have actually talked about their wines before on a previous podcast. So I keep calling it the picnic hamper, but this is called the summer cheese and wine hamper.
Is a summer cheese and wine picnic hamper.
Okay, yeah.
It's really perfect for that. It works so well. And I'm a big fan of these canned wines. I've tried quite a few, and it was really important to me from a sustainability angle from my business that I'm offering this option. And I really wanted to also give people the option to try different things, not have that full size bottle of wine. So then you can kind of maybe taste more variety in an easier way. And I thought this is just perfect. And then you've still got enough for 2 glasses. Because I think what also annoys me with kind of tasting hampers is when you only get like 100 milliliter samples.
Give us more wine.
Give them more. Give the people more wine. It's not enough.
Give the people what they want. Absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree. So, right, I'm going to open up my first can, and I'm actually not putting this in a glass. I'm going to do this picnic style because I also want, that would be what many people will do. Let's see if we can get the noise. Hang on. Let's see. Oh, yes.
That was very satisfying.
It just is. I'm glad that picked up. Right. So you've picked the barrel aged Verdejo number 2. So nice Spanish grape variety. And of course, it's obviously had a little bit of oak. And you've decided to pair, let me look at my sheet, with a cheddar, a Westcombe cheddar.
Yes,
so
Westcombe
you actually,
cheddar.
Now you have actually given some tasting notes and I guess an explanation, but I have been naughty and not done my homework. Can you explain? And also not everybody knows why you might pair a Verdejo barrel aged with a cheddar, or at least this cheddar. So talk to me about the pairing.
So with all of my hampers, what I've included is my personal tasting notes, which basically explains the wines that are in there, some information about them, the cheese, why I've paired it with this cheese as well. And then also a recipe. There's additional pairing options that you could also try as well. And then you also have my cheese and wine guidebook, where I've written how to taste cheese and wine, how to pair it together. So
it's beautiful, by the way. It's such a good book. Love it.
You essentially have me at home in a book. You could have me at home. I do travel and do cheese and wine tasting events, but I wanted it to be like an at-home tasting experience that's elevated, essentially. So, but back to what you were asking me. So, in terms of this pairing combination, because the Verdejo has got a really gorgeous tangy tangerine nectarine flavour, it's got a nice citrus note too, and also because of that oak, it's got a kind of a rounder mouthfeel. It's not as kind of light as, say, some Verdejos traditionally are.
No.
So the reason that I paired it with the cheddar is also very fruity. It's complex. It's got a lovely kind of savoury, creamy, mustardy flavour, and that acidity in the wine kind of cuts through this cheese, but the saltiness really brings out that fruity flavour in the wine. And I think it's got some salt crystals in it, the cheese as well. And Westcombe cheddar, I visited them. They're based in Somerset, and it's a cloth wrapped cheddar, and they basically got this incredible machine, and it's massive. Their cave aging rooms are just incredible, and it's like walls and walls lined with cheddar, and they've got this mechanism where it was made for them specifically. It's a bit like a Comte turner, and it turns the cheese, and they called it Tina the Turner. And it turns these big wheels of cheese, so big wheels keep on turning.
Jess, I'm choking. I'm choking. I tried your method of eating cheese and drinking at the same time, and I don't think I'm a professional at it.
So what you've got to do, you've got to hold the cheese in your mouth, hold it on your tongue, and then take a sip. Try it again. Try again.
Right, okay. Sorry, everyone. I was enjoying the Tina Turner moment, but then
I know I was making you laugh. That's not good.
Okay, hang on. Oh my God. I am so happy with that. Yeah.
Yeah?
There's because actually even the video, it's got this slightly tropical vibe, but with this kind of maybe a savoury cinnamon edge. It is got a little bit more richness, and there's a real kind of nuttiness to it.
Yes.
So I love...
And there's a herbaceous quality too. I was going to say there is something herbal there as well.
And so again, with the intensity of the cheddar, and I think you said those little pieces of salt that kind of goes through with for me, the nutty, savoury edge of the Video, but actually it's kind of got a creaminess and the richness of the cheese matching with the richer style of the dough. I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to put another go. I'm going to put the cheese and the wine in my mouth. I think
you've got to try at least 2 or 3 times just to be sure.
I do want to be sure. This is serious. I take my job very seriously.
It's a good kind of pairing recommendation, actually, just a general rule. Wine, as we know, loves salt. So if you've got a wine you want to bring out more of the fruity characteristic in it, if you opt for a cheese which has got those salt crystals in them, so I often will pair like a big bold red wine that's got lots of like tertiary flavours and some fruity flavours, but with an aged Gouda, like 2 to 4 years old, because it's got great salt crystals in it. It's got a lovely salted caramel richness, and it just works so beautifully with those bigger styles of cheeses. And then obviously you've got blue cheese, which is great as well with that kind of umami and kind of salty flavour too.
Oh my God. Cheddar for me is an interesting experience because only recently did I start tasting really good cheddar, because of course the absolute standard, what's it, Cathedral City cheddar, is that what it is?
That's
I mean, what is that? One. That's not cheddar. Well, obviously it is, but
no.
I guess I got this idea that it's just a very bland, hard, basic cheese.
You know what? I agree with you. Going into it, I actually used to tell people that I don't like cheddar. But the truth is that I don't like non-artisan. Yeah, it needs to be good cheddar, and when it is really good, it's absolutely delicious, and it's not what you think of cheddar being.
It's almost fruit. There's a fruitiness. There's a fruit quality to the cheddar.
Yeah, it's delicious. It's so good, and so similarly with wine, cheese expresses its terroir, and so much of the cheesemaker, all their decisions, all their choices of what they want to achieve comes out. So often when you do get different artisan cheddars, you get very different flavour profiles, and it's great fun to kind of taste them and experiment, and also experiment with aging and non-cloth wraps, cloth wraps. So yeah, there's so much to cheese. Similarly with wine, so that there's endless opportunity for different pairing combinations, which makes me so excited, and also makes my tasting events really fun, because it's not like there's not just one theme I can do. So often I work with groups, or I get invited back to do something else, because there is so much that you can taste. It's very fun.
Absolutely. And I mean, okay, we've got this cheddar in front of us. If you get a good cheddar that has that kind of fruity but slightly savoury, slightly salty note to it, what other wine just jumps to your mind if you could take any wine in the world that you would want to pair with cheddar?
So I'd probably go for a red. I think
typically.
Yeah, I think something. The thing that has jumped into my head straight away was actually a Rioja, but like a kind of younger Rioja. I think it would be really nice.
Like a Crianza?
Crianza.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be great. And then the other one that was coming into my head was like a Sangiovese. Because I think it's got that lovely red fruit. And I just think that would really be emphasised really well with it. And the thing is, it's interesting because I've just done my pairings for my Christmas hampers, and I was doing the pairing combinations with I was doing it with some family, and I really like my tasters to make things taste fruitier, or kind of more. That's what I
enhance
like.
That, right? Enhance the fruitiness
of Whereas others in the group, they really liked enhancing like the umami or the savoury, or so much of flavour is your palate, and it's what you really like. It's all subjective, which makes it really fun. But also it means that you've in my hampers, you've often got 3 or 4 cheeses there and 2 wines. So what I really encourage people to do is try it with the different cheeses. Like, see what you like. Take my advice as guidance. I know what works. I know how to make it work, but you might prefer something else. So,
Absolutely.
and I'm so careful when I'm choosing my cheeses that you've got such variety of flavour. So even with this hamper, the one that I've sent to you, they're actually all cow's milk cheeses, but you've got the Westcombe cheddar, you've got Taleggio, which is a washed rind Italian cheese.
I'm excited about this one.
Then you've also got Winchester, which is a Gouda style hard cheese, which also will have those salt crystals in it. So this is actually what I was talking about before. So
I'll get the red wine out.
Yeah, it's just, I really want people to have fun and have those wow moments that then gets them excited for artisan products. Because once you start eating artisan cheese, I don't think you can go back.
Okay, right. I have loved that cheddar, and actually, I really like Taleggio in general. So I'm cutting now. There's a rind to Taleggio. Am I saying it right? The name of the cheese?
Yeah, Taleggio. Yeah, you do.
Should I be eating the rind?
Absolutely. Yes.
Oh, that was a definite yes. Okay. No, Oh my God. I love how squidgy Taleggio is. And it's actually, this one's rather stinky. This one is.
It is.
When I open up the packet, I was like, oh, hello. But okay, it's going in. It's going in, everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God. Yeah. I love the creaminess, but also how firm the cheese is. Okay, so this one is delicious. Now, you have decided to pair it with a Gruner Veltliner. Yeah. So the great variety of Austria. And again, all of these, everybody, are the lovely wines from Canned Wine Co. So why have you picked Gruner Veltliner, which I haven't tasted it yet. You'll hear when I open it up, which is a very normally, it has that real fresh, high acidity. Sometimes has that white pepper spice. Can be quite green apples or green. So anyway, tell me. I'm going to try it, but why have you paired this?
So this pairing, so usually in my hampers, they're named after musical theatre characters because I love musicals.
Love that.
And the Louisa hamper, which is a character from 9, the pairing in that hamper is a Soave with Taleggio.
Okay.
And I thought
great
when
acidity
I tried
with
it.
that.
Yeah, when I tried it with the Gruner, I got a similar expression. And I was like, ooh, this is really good too. So I think my thinking behind it is that acidity, basically, because Taleggio is very mouth coating.
Yes.
And it also, though it has a meaty kind of pungent aroma, its flavour is actually more delicate and it's more fruity than it smells. So actually when you kind of ignore, you can't ignore the smell, but if you focus on what you're tasting rather than what you're smelling, it actually is more delicate and can merge very well with that kind of zippy green apple. And I just think is really it's a refreshing pairing, basically. It's almost like, because with the Taleggio as well, or any actually soft, creamy washed rind or non-washed rind cheese, like when you get your Brie, your Camembert, your kind of Baron Bigods, they're really good with sparkling wines because the bubbles in the wine, that refreshes your palate. You've got that high acidity. It's like creamy gooiness with that refreshing acidity, and then also you've got that buttery flavors or brioche and champagne as well. Oh, it's good. It's really good.
Are you hungry right now?
I'm so hungry.
I was thinking about just having a few little bites, and I'm just literally mincing my way through this cheese. It's insane. Which, by the way, everyone, I'm by myself right now, and I have 150 grams of cheddar, 150 grams of Taleggio, and 250 grams of Winchester's Gouda-style cheese. I mean, anyone want to come round and help me out? I'm going to literally be rolling down the stairs in a moment.
It's funny because people say to me, they're like, oh, you must eat so much cheese or you must drink so much wine. But actually, I drink and eat less now than I did when I first started, because I think it's that thing I was talking to the other cheesemongers about it. When we first start working in the shop, you literally eat everything. It's everything, you're tasting it all, you're taking bits home, you need to know the flavours and the combinations. But once you know it, it's almost like you don't want it you don't want it anymore. You don't need as much. Because when I eat cheese now, I taste it primarily. Whereas I think before I used to just eat it without thinking, enjoying it, but eating a lot of it. Whereas now I'll taste it and then really appreciate it. And you don't need as much of it if you are savouring it.
I have to say, taking this Gruner Veltliner, which actually does have the very white pepper edge, so it's almost... it's this lovely crunchy green apples, and it has this almost even a flinty nature to it. Super fresh. Yeah. But when I pair it with the creaminess of the cheese, and by the way, I'm just reading your note. I love this, everyone. It has a marshmallow consistency. Hell yes, it does. That's brilliant. What beautiful description. But actually, the more appley side of the Gruner comes out rather than the more flinty side. So it's really interesting how the wine seems a little bit more open by having it with the cheese.
Yeah, and I really like the lighter wine as well with this cheese, because I think if you did try this with the Verdejo, I feel
okay, I can do that. I could do that. Right, hang on.
Taste it with that wine, because that wasn't doing as much for me, because it was almost like a bit too much.
Right, let's see. Hang on. Creamy, fruity Taleggio, and then. Do you know what? It makes interesting. The Verdejo had this beautiful, for me, quite peachy. It was going even quite tropical, really rich fruitiness, but it actually makes it seem a little bit more sour.
Yeah,
interesting.
And flat.
Yeah. This is the joys of playing around, right?
Yeah, and also what I always do whenever I host a tasting event, I always tell people the pairing on the board that I wouldn't recommend, but I get them to try it, because then it makes them appreciate the ones that do really work, and then you can start to learn like, oh well, that didn't work with that as well, and this does work with this.
So for somebody listening, why is the Gruner Veltliner going better than the Verdejo? Because the Gruner Veltliner has higher acidity and is fresher and just fruitier and lighter compared to the richer, nuttier style.
I think so, but I also think that arguably the Verdejo is too complex. Like Taleggio is it's delicate, but it's complex, delicate, and it's got a lot going on. And I think the Gruner compared to the Verdejo is actually a bit simpler in terms of it's got like very obvious zingy green apple. There is some white peach there and the white pepper, but for me the Verdejo has so much, there's more going on there from different flavors, and when I tried them together, it didn't make me excited, as you can probably hear your listeners, I get very excited about cheese and wine pairings, but it just didn't do it for me. And sometimes if it's not right, then it's not right, and there are so many other different combinations that will be right.
And actually, not only is it slightly fruitier, the Gruner, when you drink it with the Taleggio, but actually, I think you mentioned it zingy, the zestiness, the vibrancy comes out more. So that's interesting. That maybe you're touching on something which is also, you don't always have to go with a super complex premium wine. Like sometimes taking, depending on the cheese you've chosen, a slightly more simple fruity wine could be even better than spending loads of money on something prestigious.
Yeah, I think it depends. It depends what you're trying to achieve, and that's what's really fun about a cheese board. Is that I really like having lots of wines with my cheese board, because then that's more fun. And sometimes like even things like I've got a lot in one of the French hamper. I have the Christine hamper. It's got a Touraine Sauvignon Blanc in there.
Okay, which is often quite tropical, actually, as Sauvignon Blancs go.
It is tropical, and it's got this lovely, like, kind of gooseberry, elderflower quality. It's very fruity. It's not. I wouldn't define it as a complex wine, but it is just so beautiful with the goat's cheese. It just it's a standout combination. And it doesn't have to be overly complicated to love it. And I think especially cheese as well, like cheese it's an indulgent thing. It's something that makes people happy, and it's a comfort food a lot of the time. So you want to be having flavours that you really enjoy. If every time you were challenging yourself with a really strong Epoisse and the strongest Roquefort, then I think you're taking away the fun and the delight of experimenting with different levels of quality, different levels of, not quality, I don't mean that, different levels of intensity than each other. Yeah.
That's intriguing, honestly. It gets me excited. I do actually, disclaimer everybody, cheese is delicious, but dairy is inflammatory. I'm always like, oh, try not to have it every day. It's not the best thing in the world, but my God, right now, throw it out the window. I'm tasting the cheeses you've picked. I don't care. I don't care.
I think also the cheeses like the cheddar and the Winchester, they're going to have less lactose in them.
Wait, that is interesting. Why? So hang on, from a health perspective, when you're like, right, I want to have slightly less inflammatory foods, you could look for cheeses with less lactose.
With more age, basically, because it'll have less moisture in it.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah.
So like Parmesan doesn't have lactose in it.
Ooh, thank you for that. That was brilliant. Oh my God, that's a whole new investigation that I'm going to do. Everybody, it's going to be okay. We can eat more cheese. Eat some Parmesan.
Yeah, so not all cheeses have lactose in them. So if you are lactose intolerant, or there are certain cheeses which have less lactose in, so you're much better having hard cheeses or aged cheeses, such as cheddar or Parmesan, as well as very mature cheeses. So you could have like a more mature brie, camembert, feta, because of the way that they're made and with the less lactose in them.
Boom. Oh, right. Love you. Thank you. And to celebrate the new news that you've brought to me, I am going to open up Saint Laurent.
Yeah, I love this wine.
So Saint Laurent this is their number 4. And for anybody just who wants to know about Saint Laurent, it's an Austrian grape variety again, actually, quite clearly, Viva, Austrian wine.
Yeah, Viva l'Austria.
This is like Pinot Noir on steroids. I mean, it's a Pinot Noir crossing and nobody seems to know what the other parent is, but it has some Pinot Noir characteristics, but it's more intense. So that's what Saint Laurent is. Now, you have paired the Saint Laurent with Winchester, which is a Gouda style cheese, aged for 20 months. I've got less lactose in this one.
Yeah. You'll be feeling good after this. It's for basically the reasons that I explained earlier. It's those salt crystals are going to really bring out that fruitiness in that wine. And also I think tannin wise as well, you've obviously got tannins to deal with in red wines. And I think the harder cheeses are sometimes better with tannins often. Because it's that mouth coating thing with the soft gooey cheeses, and then if you've got mouth coating plus tannins, you're gonna have a very dry mouth.
Okay. And actually, do you know what? I have to just say, it really works with the fruitiness. The fruity, it makes the wine more fruity. And I wanted to be more technical, so people went, "Oh, Yanina, she's so good at tasting and pairing with cheese." But literally, all I've got right now is, it works. Is that inspiring?
It brings out the lovely like red fruit characteristic. And also I think because this is like a summer picnic hamper, what I wanted was a style of red wine which could be chilled and could work in like a summery setting as well.
And actually, I want to point out that this wine, which is really kind of dark cherried, kind of maybe red plums, maybe even a little bit damsony. It's the tannins are really, really soft, but it's super, super juicy. I actually took this out of the fridge. Everything was in a box in the fridge. And so actually the Saint Laurent is actually the exact same temperature as the Verdejo and the Gruner.
Oh, great.
And I didn't even think about that. And it works perfectly. So I would say this Saint Laurent is absolutely great, chilled, really nice wine.
Yeah, it'll be both. It'll be good either way. But yeah, I think it does work for this style of wine as well. And it's been really great. Like for me, with my journey from like enthusiast to actually qualified professional, it was a real magic moment for me, like being invited to judge at competitions. So I was a judge at the British Cheese Awards, and then more recently
you told me carry on.
No, I was a judge at the Independent English Wine Awards more recently.
Love that English, boop, boop, boop. So hang on, tell me then, how does that compare? I've done judging like for the International Wine Challenge. I understand, actually perhaps people don't have a clue how we do judging, but I personally understand how you wine taste in judging. How could you explain to people who have no idea about anything how it differs from judging cheese? Or is it literally smelling it and moving it around your mouth and the texture? Are you analysing things exactly the same way as how you would wine taste?
It's similar. I've only judged at the British Cheese Awards, but I was also at the World Cheese Awards and I was watching those judges too. So I know the formula. So basically, it's similar to wine tasting. You've got different categories that you are awarding cheeses based on, and it's kind of like how similar is this to what they're trying to achieve, and also you're observing more of the look, and the texture. And the appearance then maybe you would focus on with the wine. And then, you basically taste it, you analyze it, and then but you can't spit the cheese out. you eat the cheese. you could spit it out, but I think it's more tricky to do that. So you end up eating quite a lot of cheese when you're judging cheeses. I'd also say you can kind of be lucky or unlucky with the table or the allocation. It's often random allocation, or you're put on a specific table. So for me, I was actually tasting lots of different types of cheddars, which ranged from supermarket to artisan. And then I had a few blues in the category, but there were a few people there who had mostly blues. And I think it can be quite hard to really give kind of detailed tasting notes on your 15th blue cheese. But you learn. It's a bit like anything, and similar with wine tasting. Your palate develops.
And also when you do 15, 20 New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs, sometimes you start running out of descriptors.
Yeah.
You're like,
exactly.
How many more times can I say black currant leaf and gooseberry, cat's pee on a gooseberry bush?
Exactly. And then also with the especially the English wine ones, I mean, by the end of we had a flight of, I think the first session we had maybe 15 wines, and then maybe a similar amount, and by the end of it my teeth were hurting because just all the sugar and the sparkling wines. So
oh, you poor thing.
It's a great experience. Poor me.
I actually meant that genuinely, because I actually know how after the last wine judging I did of 100 wines for 5 days, everybody, I couldn't brush my teeth properly. I had to just really very carefully stroke my teeth with the toothbrush because my gums were so tender. So listen, when you drink a wine with an award sticker on it, please understand how hard we worked and how much we suffered for days after to give you that award, that sticker.
It's interesting you say that kind of about, because people often will say to me oh my God, you've got the best job ever, and I definitely do. It is. But there is
it's not all fun.
No, but also there's so much work involved kind of behind the scenes that you don't see. Obviously with setting up, and I had no idea either when I kind of embarked on setting up a business. You have to have the alcohol licenses, the food licensing, the proper spec for the building and the kitchen, and then designing a website and packaging and shipping solutions. There's so many things, but once you get it right and you are in the flow with it, then it's amazing. But oh my gosh, I've learned some things have gone wrong.
They may have done, but I can conclude that your packaging, by the way, and quite clearly what you've learned about how you wrap cheese, well done. Love the packaging, everybody. Go to my Instagram to see the video of me unveiling beautifully and romantically the box, because like the packaging. That gets a thumbs up. But what gets more of a thumbs up, by the way, is this Gouda. And interesting. So I love cheese, but I'm not a cheese expert at all. And this is where I genuinely struggle. But the Gouda I've compared it to the cheddar. And the cheddar is actually a fruitier cheese. There's more sweetness if you actually are able to use that as a descriptor. I don't even know. But the Gouda is more savoury and more nutty. So I can understand why you've gone for a red wine on the Gouda. But I have to also say I was very naughty, and I also tried the Verdejo barrel aged with the Gouda, and it also works, which makes sense, because basically instead of taking a juicy red, because it's slightly more savoury than the fruity whites, but the Verdejo, because it's been barrel aged and it's a bit more, even though it has the richness of fruit, but it has the nuttiness and it has the body and it has a bit more maturity to it, it seems to go really nicely also with this more savoury flavours of the Gouda. Am I correct? Did I win?
No, I completely agree. Agree.
Yay!
And it's it's really lovely to have a conversation with someone who is analysing what I'm doing, which this conversation is usually just in my head.
Yeah.
So it's nice to chat to someone about it too, because when you get that magical flavour correct, and I often describe it as, I don't know if you've seen the film Ratatouille.
Love that.
There's the bit when Remy is like he's actually pairing a grape, I think, with a cheese, or it's a strawberry, but he basically like describes that it all coming together, and there's like fireworks that go off, and it's magical, and I'm like, yeah, that's it, that's what I look for, and when I find it, then that goes in my hamper and it goes in my tasting events.
But you know what? I think what you said, to conclude on, I mean, this episode specifically, before we go into next week's episode, which is going to be even more detailed on cheese and wine, surprise, is that, funny, I've just now had a sip of the Grüne Veltliner with the Gouda, and now it doesn't have the same fruitiness that the Taleggio gave, but because this is a more savoury, nuttier cheese, the Gouda, it then enhanced the more white pepper vibes. So this is all subjective, as you just said. I've done a wine pairing episode a few Christmases ago. Everyone have good luck finding it. I'll go back a bit. But basically, it was on chocolate and wine, and also looking at some sweet wines, but also mostly dry still wines. And some really, really works. Some really, really work, but it's very, very subjective, because it really is how it makes it feel for you and your palate. And I have to say that, as an example, I really like the fruitiness of what you're doing with the Saint Laurent, the red wine, with this slightly more savoury, nutty, crystallised cheese, the Gouda. But with the Grüne, if you don't like such fruity wines, because Grüne is somewhere in between, instead of enhancing the fruitiness by putting the Grüne with a slightly more savoury, nutty, more mature cheese, I think it then brings out the more savoury, flinty, smoky style of the Grüne, which is intriguing, right?
And also for it's seasonal cheese, obviously, and it's seasonal with kind of when you're eating it, and like obviously having it on like a hot summer's day is quite different to eating it at Christmas. So when I've been putting my Christmas pairings together, in the brilliant sunshine, I've been mindful of kind of what flavour combinations are you going to want to be enjoying and indulging at that time as well. And I think there's different flavours, different flavours for different seasons as well.
Well, in the heat, for anybody who doesn't know, as we are recording this at where are we? Are we in June? Yes, middle of June we are recording this, and we are hot. England has finally got some sunshine. We're enjoying it, but we are all hot. So this is a perfect time to have some summer sippers, summer wine and cheeses to pair. So thank you, Jess. Really appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
Next week, we will be continuing our chat, and Jess will be telling us some lesser known or underrated cheese and wine combinations that we need to know about. She'll be talking about how textures of cheese can influence the choice of wine pairings. How does the aging and ripeness of a cheese impact the choice of wine pairing? So much to learn next week. But to finish, I have a wine and cheese quote for you, and this is from Joan Collins, and she said, "Age is just a number. It's totally irrelevant unless, of course, you happen to be a bottle of wine or a piece of cheese." Well, you'll definitely find out more about that next week. And so that is it for today. Don't forget to share this with your wine-loving friends or cheese friends. Leave me a rating on Spotify, a review on Apple Podcasts, or any app that allows you to do so that you're listening on. Like the podcast, and have a very joyous and tasty week. I'll leave a link down in the show notes for where you can get these hampers with the sun shining. I can highly recommend this summer hamper. Love and light to you all, and until next week, cheers to you.